Power does not announce itself. It does not raise its voice. It does not demand attention. And it does not need to be seen, to be real. This is the first illusion that must be broken, that power requires visibility, dominance, or noise. Most people live inside this illusion without realizing it. They believe power is something you project outward, something you prove, something you perform. They mistake intensity for strength and visibility for authority. But intensity is unstable, and visibility is fragile. Anything that requires constant expression can be disrupted. Anything that depends on reaction can be broken. True power does not behave this way. It is quiet. It is internal. And once formed, it does not fluctuate. This is where discipline begins. Not as a routine, not as a schedule, not as something you force yourself to do, but as an identity that no longer negotiates with chaos. Most people experience discipline in spurts. They surge, they push, they try to become someone new, and then they collapse. Because spurts are fueled by emotion, and emotion is temporary. What they lack is not effort. It is coherence. They have not become disciplined. They are only visiting it. And what you visit, you can abandon. This is why so many capable people feel inconsistent. Despite knowing what to do, their actions change, but their identity does not. And identity always wins. In ancient Japan, this was understood differently. Discipline was not seen as a behavior, but as a state of being. A samurai did not wake up and decide to be disciplined. There was no debate, no motivation required. The body followed the mind, and the mind was already settled. Among them, there was one man who understood this more clearly than most. Miyamoto Musashi is often remembered for his victories, but that memory misses the point. Musashi was not unbreakable because he won fights. He won fights because he had already removed everything inside himself that could be broken. He did not cultivate aggression. He removed hesitation. He did not amplify force. He eliminated waste. This is a critical distinction. Most people try to add strength to their lives. Musashi subtracted weakness. Not physical weakness, but internal noise, doubt, ego, the need to be seen, the need to prove, the need to dominate. All of it was excess, and excess creates openings. In samurai philosophy, anything unnecessary is a liability, a wasted movement, a wandering thought, a reactive emotion. Each one creates a crack, and cracks are where pressure enters. This is why Musashi lived simply, not as an aesthetic, not as a performance of humility, but because simplicity leaves nothing to defend. When there is nothing extra, nothing can be taken. This is what made him unbreakable. Not confidence, not bravado, but internal closure. Most people live with open loops in their mind, unresolved identities, unfinished self-images. They are constantly negotiating with themselves. Should I act? Or should I wait? Should I push harder? Or pull back? This negotiation drains energy. Musashi did not negotiate. His identity was settled. And because it was settled, his actions were precise. This is the difference between restrained power and reactive force. Reactive force is loud. Restrained power is final. Reactive force needs acknowledgement. Restrained power does not. Reactive force tries to control outcomes. Restrained power controls itself. This is why true discipline feels calm. Not rigid, not intense. Calm. Calm is not weakness. Calm is the absence of internal conflict. And where there is no conflict, there is no fracture. This is what most people misunderstand. They think discipline is about doing more. But discipline is about removing what interrupts follow through. Musashi did not rely on willpower. Willpower fluctuates. He relied on alignment. When identity and action are the same, there is no resistance. This is why his life appeared severe to outsiders. Why people described him as extreme. It becomes what you are. And when identity settles, discipline stops being something you do. It becomes what you are. Once identity settles, structure no longer feels imposed. This is where most people get confused. They believe structure creates discipline. But structure does not create anything. Structure only reveals what already exists. If identity is fragmented, structure feels suffocating. If identity is settled, structure feels natural. This is why forcing routines fails. Routines applied to an unstable identity will always collapse. not because the routine is wrong, but because it conflicts with who the person believes they are. A man who still negotiates with himself will sabotage any structure placed on him, not consciously, but through hesitation, delay, inconsistency. This is not laziness, it is misalignment. In samurai philosophy, alignment came before technique, before skill, before mastery. The mind was shaped first, because a fractured mind produces fractured action, and fractured action leaks energy. Most people live with constant energy leaks. They do not notice them, because the leaks feel normal. Second-guessing, overthinking, explaining themselves unnecessarily, starting strong, then tapering off, needing external pressure to remain consistent. Each one is a sign, not of weakness, but of an identity that has not closed. The samurai closed identity early. There was no alternate self to fall back into, no version that avoided responsibility, no version that waited for motivation. This is why their discipline appeared relentless, not because they pushed harder, but because there was nothing inside them pulling in the opposite direction. When there is no internal resistance, action feels effortless. This is the paradox most people miss. Effortlessness is not softness. Effortlessness is efficiency. A blade does not cut by trying harder. It cuts because there is no friction in its edge. In the same way, a disciplined life is not sharp because of force, but because of clarity. Clarity removes friction. Friction is created by internal debate. Should I do this now, or later? Should I commit fully, or keep an escape route? These questions seem harmless, but they erode consistency over time. The samurai did not ask these questions, not because they lacked awareness, but because awareness had already resolved them. Once identity is sealed, behavior follows automatically. This is why discipline becomes quiet, invisible. Others do not see it happening, because there is nothing dramatic to observe. No declarations, no announcements, only consistency that does not fluctuate with mood. This is restrained power. Power that does not need to escalate, power that does not react, power that does not explain itself. Most people believe power is demonstrated, but demonstrated power is fragile, because it depends on response. True power is assumed. It moves without needing confirmation. This is why Musashi often appeared indifferent, not disengaged, indifferent to distraction. He did not conserve energy through rest alone, but through elimination of unnecessary movement, unnecessary thought, unnecessary emotion. Every excess was removed, and what remained was focus that did not waver. This level of discipline cannot be copied. It cannot be mimicked, because it does not come from technique. It comes from refusal. Refusal to fragment attention. Refusal to live in half-commitments. Refusal to perform strength instead of embodying it. Most people exhaust themselves by trying to look disciplined. They curate routines, habits, systems, but inside, they are still undecided. Undecided minds produce inconsistent lives. The samurai resolved the mind first. Once resolved, discipline was no longer a task. It was a consequence. This is the shift most people never make. They keep adjusting behavior, hoping identity will follow. But identity does not chase action. Action obeys identity. When this is understood, everything simplifies. You stop asking how to be disciplined, and start noticing what interrupts your natural follow-through. Every interruption is a signal, a place where identity is still open. This is not something to fix through effort. It is something to close through clarity. And once closed, discipline no longer rises and falls. It stabilizes, quietly, without force, without noise. This is how consistency is forged. Not by becoming harsher, but by becoming more exact, more internally aligned, more resolved. And when resolution is complete, there is nothing left to negotiate. In the final section, this becomes unmistakable, because what remains is not effort, not discipline, not even control. It is identity that no longer fractures under pressure. When identity is fully resolved, pressure stops feeling threatening. Not because pressure disappears, but because there is nothing inside you left to fracture. This is the final misunderstanding. People think becoming unbreakable means becoming harder, more aggressive, more forceful. But hardness cracks. What does not crack is what no longer resists itself. The unbreakable are not rigid. They are integrated. Every part moving in the same direction, without argument. This is why restraint is stronger than force. Force must constantly reassert itself. Restraint does not. Once restraint is embodied, action becomes clean. There is no excess movement, no emotional spillover, no wasted attention. Nothing leaks. This is what the samurai understood at the deepest level. That power expressed outwardly is already compensating for something unresolved inwardly. So they resolved the inside first. Once resolved, nothing needed to be displayed. Their presence was enough. Not because it dominated, but because it did not waver. Wavering is what breaks people. Not failure, not difficulty, indecision, the constant reopening of identity, under pressure. Most people collapse not because the path is too hard, but because they keep reconsidering who they are while walking it. This creates fatigue. This creates inconsistency. This creates fracture. The disciplined do not escape hardship. They escape in a debate. Once debate ends, movement stabilizes. Not fast, not slow, steady. This is why discipline at this level feels almost invisible. You are not thinking about it. You are not maintaining it. You are not motivating yourself into it. There is nothing to maintain, because nothing is fluctuating. The mind is no longer opening escape routes, no longer bargaining with discomfort, no longer asking if this version of you will last. It already has. This is the quiet difference between those who endure and those who burn out. Burnout comes from internal resistance, not from commitment. Endurance comes from alignment, and alignment is not created through effort. It is created through closure. Closure of identity. Once closed, life stops feeling like a series of tests and starts feeling like execution, clean, simple, not dramatic. This is what it means to already be disciplined, not aspiring to it, not practicing it, already standing inside it. From here, there is no struggle to continue, only continuation itself. No proving, no announcement, just a life that moves forward, without needing permission from doubt. This is restrained power, not because it is held back, but because there is nothing left to release. And once you recognize this, you stop trying to become unbreakable, because you see, you were never breaking, you were negotiating, and now, there is nothing left to negotiate. Only execution, only presence, only what remains, when identity is settled completely. Stay here, not as effort, as fact. When identity is settled, time itself feels different. There is no urgency to arrive, and no fear of falling behind, because movement is no longer powered by pressure. It is powered by inevitability. This is why the disciplined appear patient, not because they are waiting, but because nothing inside them is rushing. Rushing is a symptom of uncertainty. When you are unsure of who you are, every moment feels like it must be used to compensate. But when identity is complete, there is no compensation required. Action unfolds at the correct pace, without forcing itself forward. This is why true discipline feels timeless. It does not spike, and it does not decay. It does not depend on inspiration. It does not wait for the perfect conditions. It simply continues. The unbreakable do not need reminders. They do not need reinforcement. They do not need to be convinced, because conviction is no longer a thought. It is a state, and states do not fluctuate. They remain, until something stronger causes them. This is why discipline at this level cannot be taken from you. It cannot be disrupted by chaos. It cannot be diluted by distraction. Because it does not live in behavior. It lives in identity, and identity, once closed, does not reopen under pressure. This is the quiet end of seeking, not because there is nothing left to grow, but because growth no longer requires force. Only presence, only execution, only the calm repetition of what is already decided. We'll leave it here. No instruction, no motivation, only recognition. See you next time. And as always, remember to stay in tune with your own mind frequency.